Welcome to my Simple Solutions show. This is actually the second part of a series called the Behavior Eliminator. Our first segment looked at pushing past emotional distractions to professional action, which is the first step of behavior planning. This segment will actually look at understanding the ABCs of behavior. Does this make sense? Have you ever had a challenging behavior and you had a behavior expert come in and start giving you solutions before they even understand the problem? It's like your best girlfriend. You should leave that man. You don't even know the situation. So even though we have well-meaning administrators and colleagues helping us, giving us solutions, giving us advice, before they can do this, they have to have a deep understanding of the problem. Human behavior is complex. It seldom originates from just one factor. And the reason that your behavior strategies aren't working is because you're not addressing all the complicated parts of a problem. So I created the Behavior Eliminator ABC checklist. And the first page of this checklist is really understanding what is the scope of the problem. It takes, what's happening in the community, aggression, responses, past strategies, the reason behind the behavior, and looks at it in an integrated whole that's very visual. If you only focus on the problem, you might miss the easy solution. So a couple of things to think of is that the reason behind challenging behavior doesn't only lie within the individual student, and that actually reflects a lack of knowledge of human behavior. So when someone's observing and they only observe what the student did and not the classroom, what the adult did, what the other children did, then it's very limiting in being able to understand and put together strategies. There are internal factors, temperament, cognition, external factors like poverty, family life, and in order to gain a meaningful understanding of student behavior, there must be a meaningful understanding of adult behavior and the ecological context under which all these behaviors occur. So dust off that Psychology 101 book and think about the antecedent. I learned about this, but I never really understood how to use it effectively when I had a challenge. So first of all, I have a space for teachers to describe the problem. This worksheet is, like I said, it's taken 15 years to develop, and I've used it to help teachers and leaders and parents to be able to understand behavior. And what I noticed is that when I had the blank sheet only, they would just stare at it, like, you want me to fill this out? So when you have a challenging behavior, I found that everyone appreciated having a space where I kind of started the problem solving for them, and they could kind of check off things that apply. So of course you have space to describe on your own, but you also have a section where I've kind of started the behavior planning thought process for you. Next, well, this is actually an easy section, the B, which is the behavior. And when I support teachers, I tend to start here. I actually start with, what is the behavior? Like, oh yeah, I know that. So I find that whether it be a teacher or a parent, they have a pretty relatively easy time describing what the actual challenge is. Make sure that they're very descriptive and objective. So for example, I've had people write down, a child wants their own way. What exactly does that mean, they want their own way? Do they want a toy? Do they want to avoid a task? What is their way? Way is not descriptive enough for me to understand strategy. But once I understand what they're trying to gain or avoid or what they're trying to get out of the behavior, then my problem solving just kind of kicks right in. Also, underneath behavior, I help everyone to think about the scope of the problem. So it's kind of like dieting. If you don't know where you started, how do you know that you've made any progress? So I have a section here below that should also be filled out. How often is it happening? What's the intensity? What's the frequency? You know, if you don't fill this out, how will you know if you've made progress? So for example, I was working with a teacher and we were looking at, this data about the scope and the problem, and I looked at 1 week to the next. So I looked at this week, and the child was cursing. Well, this week you got 2 MFs. The child was cursing the teacher out. But then I looked at the week before, and this same teacher with the same child got 5 MFs. All right, our strategy's working. So really, when you're working with a child, have you been there that is spinning and biting and hitting you? Oh my gosh, the small wins keep you motivated. So this teacher was very motivated. It's working. It's taken time. I'm still, getting cursed, but it's less. So those small bits can be very encouraging when you have a child that is really challenging you on every turn. The next part of the worksheet looks at consequences. And again, this could be really helpful in designing strategies. One, it looks at how all the adults might be responding to a challenging behavior. So this is really helpful. Have you ever had a time where a child stops a behavior with one adult but doesn't with the other? Oh yeah, so we need to know what all the adults are doing. Maybe that adult where the child stops the behavior is doing something that the other adult needs to implement. Or we need to look and see if we're all consistent. Is one person doing one strategy and the other person not doing it? So it really helps with understanding what are we all really doing and how consistent are we as adults with it, working with a child. Next, we also need to examine, and one other point. When we're looking at our reactions, we just don't want to look at our verbal reactions, but also our physical reactions. For example, I'm really animated, as you all know, and it serves me very well when I'm doing workshops or I'm working with children and reading a story or doing a presentation. It does not serve me well when a child is challenging. So, for example, a child spit on me, I'd be like, oh, and that's actually my first reaction. But I can actually be reinforcing the behavior by having that reaction. Those eyes are really big, and children might think it's funny, or they might think it's a great way to gain power. So understanding your physical reactions is also really important. I actually try to keep my face blank, and I tend to approach a child and kind of touch their shoulder from the back, so they don't see my face kind of showing too much of a reaction that way. So again, it really helps you to think about strategy. Now, as you look on the form, you also see that I have here, how did the other children react? This is also really key. So what are the other children doing? For example, we've had children that are so aggressive that the other children don't play with them, and then they actually have more behavior to gain their attention. Or, again, in the situation of cursing, we had a student that was cursing, and the other children would say, ooh, ooh, oh, you are cursing, and I'm jealous. And their response, yeah, you're laughing too, their response was so animated that it was reinforcing to the students that were having the bad behavior. So it may actually be that in that instance that we use a strategy with the other children who were socially competent. So we actually taught them to ignore. Put on your ignoring shield and walk away. So that didn't stop all the behavior, but it really did minimize some of the cursing that was happening because they weren't getting everyone's attention anymore. Right. Did you know that most behavior plans fail because the person created it did not take into account the reason or reasons behind the challenging behavior. So the purpose of the behavior will guide a lot of your strategies. Just look at a child biting. Some children are biting for sensory stimulation. Other children are biting because they're angry and can't deal with frustration. Other children are biting because they're hungry. Or other children are biting because of the reaction they get when they bite. So what you have to do is think about all the reasons, right? It could be one or many reasons behind a behavior. Sometimes I spit on you because I want to avoid a task. Many times children do something like spit on a teacher and they're like, get out of here. And they don't have to do work. They don't have to do the task at hand. So they're very smart. They're just going about it the wrong way. So you want to look at the reason or reasons behind the behavior or describe them. Lifestyle changes. Just think about a child's morning. I have some children that are up all night watching Atlanta Housewives, ate hot stuffed potato chips and Pepsi for breakfast. Their parent rushed them. Maybe they didn't even, clean them up, help them to brush their teeth. They just pulled them out of bed and then yelled at them, it's your fault that I'm late. And then now you think that child's going to walk in your room and do circle time? Oh, no, honey. They are tired. They've eaten the wrong food. They've been yelled at already. We've had many children that really struggle on Monday. So we can't change lifestyle events, but we can minimize them. Sometimes, you know what? Before we start, do you need to wash your face? Do you need, right? What do you need right now? Sometimes just saying, wow, it is a hard weekend. Or, whew, back to it. Yeah. You know what? Let's get a hug before we get started. We as adults say our lifestyle events. Boy, I really had a tough weekend. Or my mom's sick. Or, wow, I'm going through a divorce. Children don't get to say those things. And as adults, we adjust for other adults. Oh, I'll take care of it. You've got enough to worry about. We never give children that chance. So, second step in the Behavior Eliminator. Understand the solution. So I'm starting to jump to solution 2. Understand the problem before understanding and jumping to solutions. You have to understand all parts. Behavior is very complex. Okay? And the next step after the ABCs, we're going to get into change the child, change you, and change the consequences. So look out for part 3. Did you like this form? Well, you can actually purchase it on Teachers Pay Teachers. Look for my store, Angela Searcy's Simple Solutions. Want more videos? Well, definitely look at my YouTube channel, Angela Searcy's Simple Solutions channel. And lastly, I love to connect with you online. So please continue to send your questions, send your ideas and worries and what you want for the next series. And thank you all for listening. I'll see you online.